Good evening, and welcome to season three of Leadership Matters. Uh, Bi-weekly now, have our series aimed at supporting leaders, and we are so excited because we are growing and we are expanding. We are now on Instagram, we are now on Facebook, we are on YouTube, and today we are so happy, we are so elated for this very first episode to be on VOB 92.9. So if you prefer to hear on radio, you can now tune in and you can hear us on radio. And we are thankful for our partners, Crumbs Bakeries. They have come on board and they are going to be working with us throughout this season. So we say thank you so very much to Mr. Todd and his team at Crumbs Bakeries. So before we go any further, let's pause for a cause.
Crumbs Bakery, so good, even down to the last crumb.
Crumbs Bakeries, so good, even down to the last crumb. And as I see those crumbs, I see the weight starting to pile on. This evening we have with us Maxine Atring. Maxine is out of the beautiful country of Trinidad and Tobago, and she's an executive coach. Um, those who are on LinkedIn, those who are on Instagram and doing the different platforms, you are accustomed to seeing her and also hearing her voice because she's been doing some fantastic things around the world. So we want to say welcome, Maxine.
Welcome, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Bick, for having me. I'm so accustomed hosting people. I'm telling you, welcome.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Happens sometimes. But we are so excited to have you this evening with us. And you are the very first person who is getting the opportunity to be with us in season three. So tell us a little bit about who Maxine Atring is.
That's always such a complex question for me to answer. So on one hand, there is the professional woman. I've been an accountant for over 20 years. I'm a certified management accountant. And basically, I love accounting. And at some point in time, being an accountant stopped making my heart sing. And so when my heart song, I needed to find it back. And through a series, a self journey, a journey through which I led myself and emerged on the other side with a different desire, I then wanted to work with people in teams and very much take leadership and dismantle. I wanted to tell people that, hey, you know what? You are the leader that you need to be. Maybe you need a little guidance, maybe you need to trim fat, whatever it is, but you know what? You were born with everything that you need to take leadership. And so that is why I do exactly what is there in my title. That's why I am an executive coach, because I work so that they can find their own brand of leadership. And then Gestalt is the brand of coaching that I do. It's a humanistic psychology. OD is organizational development, and I'm a leadership specialist. So that's really about me professionally, making that arc from the technical, where it's just about the numbers, back into the soft skill and really back to the heart of people. So that's me professionally. And then there's the other side of me, which is all of who I am. And I describe myself as fit. I am flawed with sparks of brilliance. So I'm here to say that I'm not, telling anybody that my way is the best. No, I'm here learning with you, Dr. Burke, this evening. I'm here learning with Carol. I'm learning with all the people who come along the way on my journey. And as I learn, I share what I have experienced and what I have learned as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit more, Maxine. We've been through one of the most tumultuous periods, in this world's history. How has Maxine been managing through this entire pandemic? How have you been coping through this pandemic?
So 2020 was tough. For me, I say, 2020 is a time that I beneath it. So there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress in the system. It's something that we didn't know what it was. And as I slowed it from everything, retreated from news, retreated from all the conspiracy theories, and just really went into myself, I became very, very dormant, and in that dormancy, I was able to cope with all that was in the system. And I know a lot of people who are professionals, a lot of people were pivoting. Well, I did not pivot. I
Mm-hmm.
stayed very, very still, and so I actually on my blog this week I spoke about it because I ended 2020 this the word pivot. I think that there was a lot of guilt for a lot of people because they weren't doing anything. There were some people, some of us who were doing seminars because there were a lot of free stuff, right? Free online conferences, learn a language. And I think a lot of people felt guilty about not doing that
Yeah.
because they faced it. And so I always share with my stories that I just didn't do anything. And I gave myself permission to not do anything. I gave myself permission so that I had no guilt, I had no shame about doing nothing, except maybe eating a lot. Even
Right,
then,
right.
no guilt, right? Because it's what we need to do in whatever way we can that allows us to cope. Of course, we want to stay healthy. We don't want to go into any form of any addictive consumptions. And at the same time, we still need to be gentle with ourselves. So I was very gentle with myself. I allowed myself to rest. So in 2021, if you Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, just this weekend, we announced that we'll have a sort of curfew from 9 to 6 every day. And really and truly, it's not been as difficult as it has been in 2020 because I've learned. I've been there in 2020. I have the muscle memory. Even though it's a scary time because our numbers are exploding, I'm still not afraid because I've been there. There's a little bit more information out. So when we have knowledge, we feel a lot more comfortable. But I have accepted that this is a condition that I have no control over. I've accepted that all the lockdowns and shutdowns, they I can't change that because I'm not the prime minister. And so therefore I have been able to move into acceptance. And so I say to people, even if you're not there, it's okay. The first thing we need to really say, we've never been here before. The whole world doesn't know what to do. And how about we just be gentle with ourselves and support ourselves at this point in time?
So very true. I think oftentimes as leaders, we think that we must be able to, as you introduced the whole concept of pivoting quickly, and we must be able to move along and keep going. But I think that it is oftentimes important for us to do that pause also. And I think that COVID allowed us all to pause.
Yes. And I think I want to take the opportunity to clear up about pivoting. And I think a lot of people make the assumption that when you pivot, you just move from one place to the next. So I think we're familiar with the game netball in Trinidad in the Caribbean. And so
Yeah.
what does a netballer do when they receive the ball? They land, right? They land on 2 feet, then they lift one foot off the ground and they pivot. So there must be stability for us to pivot. I think a lot of times the assumption we could just say, "Oh, I'm an accountant. I'm going to become a coach." No, that something must be on the ground. You have to stabilize yourself and make that turn. So I want to put that out there because I think the notion of pivoting has been so used that the meaning of the word is you must have a foot on the ground before you make that change. So
So
if you're staying still, if you're not doing anything, maybe you're just putting your foot on the ground and then you'll be able to say, yeah.
no, I
So I
think
want to
so
pull
too.
that out to your people. Yeah,
Thank you, thank you. Let's pause for a cause at this time.
sure.
So Maxine, we are looking this evening a lot at the whole concept of future leadership, obviously a post-COVID reality. And
Mm.
even sometimes when I say that whole concept of post-COVID, I say to myself, I don't know if there is going to be such a thing as post-COVID, if we might very well be in this for a while yet. But you've been looking over the last couple of months at a very interesting concept, leadership unlearned. Leadership unlearned.
Absolutely.
Could you talk to us a little bit about what that whole concept is about?
So, as I spoke before, in terms of my personal journey, taking time out, I mean, there was a time I didn't work for 5 years, really trying to figure out what was my next step. It took me that long to figure it out, right? and, and
Yes,
so, what I did in that time, I really went into my own wilderness. That's the way I describe it. Um, Trying to figure out what was the next step. And in that figuring out, I realized that I needed to examine a lot of the assumptions I made about myself, my environment, and what it meant to be a professional and what it meant to be successful. And to do that, I had to release a lot of the notions that I had first before I could even begin to create new ones. So in this leadership space that I occupy, I always ask leaders, where did you learn that from? Whose
yeah,
voice is speaking? Are you speaking because a lot of us we carry things like so for example, I'll take one that is very familiar. A lot of us are very proud of the schools that we went to. We went to a particular high school, the Queens in Barbados and the Harrisons and whatever the schools are. And we're very, very proud of that. And we went to those schools between 11 and possibly 18. And we're 40, we're 30, we're 50, we're 60. And some of the things that we hold on to with great value and we hold on and with great virtue as well. The question is, are they still relevant?
yeah.
30 years have passed since you put on a short pants, or a skirt, a blue skirt, and gone out to your schools. And some of those things, if you've never examined it, is it still valuable? And so, what I hold out is that we need to examine our lives. We need to examine our thoughts and make sure they are, in fact, our real thoughts that are contextual today and not something that was planted by somebody with a particular mission, whether it was our safety, our protection, or their desire for us to do well in the future. And really, from where we are right now, ask those questions. And I always say, an unexamined life is not worth living.
Oh. Say that again. You need to say that again for somebody who's listening.
An unexamined life is not worth living. It's not my original statement. Let me just put that out there. I think it belongs to Anne Lamont. Yeah.
Okay, so this whole period has brought you to that place. So what are some of these things that you are now unlearning?
So I will share with you the things that I have unlearned. So I could share with you one that is very common in Trinidad. This saying, after joy is sorrow. And I'm sure anybody with a biblical or Christian background knows that line. And I always wondered, and so for me, living with that, that sound of warning from my mother, wanting to make sure that we don't get too much ahead of ourselves, to look at that and really examine and say, where did it start from? When I started to examine it, I noticed that there is a way in which I did not celebrate fully. There was a way in which I would achieve something, celebrate it, but not too much, because you don't want to be too boasty, and you don't want to be putting yourself out there, and bigging up yourself. Always kind of like, yeah, it's you did something, so like 80%. And I realized that the 20% that I was holding back on was exactly because there was this belief that after joy is sorrow. So be careful when you're celebrating because you don't know who looking at you, you don't know whatever, whatever, whatever. And when I began to go back and check the biblical references of it, it wasn't quite the same as our colloquial interpretation of it. And so therefore I was able to release that. I unlearned what I grew up with And now I've learned that, after joy may be sorrow, but after joy can come more joy.
Mhm.
It could be just be joy, full stop. And so that has made a huge difference to the ways in which I celebrate myself and other people. And almost on a daily basis, I have that greater experience of joy. So that's one on a personal level. And then I think my whole arc around leadership, where I would say to listeners, when you think of a leader, when I say the word leader, what image comes to your mind? And if it is that when you answer that question, your image doesn't come to mind, then you have stuff to unlearn. So when we think about leadership, and I looked at it, most leadership books have been written by white American men. So we've had that long tradition of not necessarily like management studies or research, but books that people have been holding on to. There's Who Moved My Cheese? There's been The Road Less Traveled. So a lot of them were written by white American males. So for a lot of us who are reading that material, there is some stuff in that material that we need to unlearn, that we need to examine and say, does it fit my Caribbean context? When they speak about wearing a particular suit, does it suit me walking down Bridgetown at noon when I go into Chaffette's to get my lunch?
Yeah.
Some of it is totally irrelevant to us. I speak a lot about Barbados because I went to University of the West Indies there, so I'm very familiar with Barbados, and I love Barbados. Let me just say that. So yeah, so those are some of the things that I had to unlearn. First to begin, that me as a as an Afro-Caribbean woman, I am a leader. Me growing up in my particular circumstance, I come from a single parent home, 4 girls. I am a leader. And therefore, when I look at other people around me, that's what I see in them. So it's very, very much for me a personal thing about unlearning all that I've been taught since I was knee high by teachers, by my parents, by the wider community, the notion of what a professional looks like. I mean, you can see that I have natural hair. And I remember being part of an executive team in 2014. And a woman who really meant well, she said to me, 10, 15 years ago, you could not wear your hair like that in a boardroom. And I said to her, well, thank God it's not 10 to 15 years ago. So those are the things that we need to unlearn for us to be able to widen our lens and really pick up all the things that we are, because we are missing so much of us when we think about these constructs as something external to us as Caribbean people.
So very true. Let's pause at this time for another cause.
Here's some of your best news since the lockdowns. 7 Crumbs Bakery locations are now open on Sundays and bank holidays from 7 in the morning. They are Eagle Hall, Wildy, Fairchild Street, Oystons, My Lord's Hill, Speightstown and Fairview, while the other 10 Crumbs locations open Monday to Saturday as usual. Crumbs for a wide variety of fresh cakes, pastries and bread. Crumbs, so good, even down to the last crumb.
So we are talking this evening to Maxine Atring, Executive Coach, and we are so excited. This is the first episode of Season 3 of Leadership Matters, and we are now on 92.9 FM. Now, Maxine, one of the things that we obviously, when we unlearn certain things, there are things then that we are learning also along the way. I believe that as leaders, when you unlearn, you build capacity because you're creating space for more, for new things. During this period, what are some of those new things that Maxine has been able to embrace and she's been able to learn? Some of those most significant lessons that you have been able to watch as COVID and this entire pandemic unfolds before your eyes.
So one of my biggest, you're so right about, creating space. And so, the title of this is The Future Post-COVID. And the way I think about the future is as a blank canvas. And for me, that is the gift that I have received during COVID. Whereas I would say when I came into 2020, I was sort of looking at, this is my future. This is what I'm going to do. I'm in the leadership space and I'm going to do this and that and that. And coming into 2021, I started playing in 2020 during the pandemic when I was dormant about this idea of a blank canvas. And so I came into 2021 with this canvas. It's still blank, nothing has been painted on it. And I'm really, really aware that I can paint almost anything on it. Because one of the gifts that COVID has given us is that because none of us knew about what was happening, that split second, in that slow moment, we were all equal. And I mean, like, that for me was just like a freeing moment, knowing that where I am today, that blank canvas could take me basically anywhere. And the fact that we have an online capability to do so, and everybody's now so much more comfortable with this online, speaking to each other, having interviews, conducting sessions, it just really magnifies that we can go anywhere. So that is one. And then the other one, so embroiled in that, all that blank canvas stuff, is a lot of optimism, a lot of hope. And then the other one is just the beauty and power of community, because we're online, of course. Dr. Britt, now you're part of my community. I just held an online conference. Biba is part of my community. And so we keep growing this community of real people where we can get in touch, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Facebook. And I love that. So that's what this period has been doing for me, just leaving me open. So very much all of my assumptions, I'm daily trying to say, okay, just pat down a little bit, don't think about anything too much. Just focus on that blank canvas and in a way, let the picture emerge. So whereas before I was very much of a planning person, that's why my accounting background meets my creative background, where scheduling, planning, timing, cost. And now I'm saying, you know what, let it emerge. So I'm sort of like have loose frameworks and looking to see what has emerged. And that's a big one for me, that's a big one.
I know, no, Maxine, as you're talking, I'm sure that there are some leaders out there who are saying to themselves, this lady, she doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right. Leaders plan, leaders put things in place, leaders have vision, they see they see the future and um how are you managing that process? Because I'm sure there are times when you feel to meddle, when you feel to get in there and to make certain things happen, especially your custom doing that. How are
Yeah.
you actually managing that process?
So I'll say to the leaders who are really reacting to the idea of no planning, in 2019, did you see coronavirus coming? That's one. And two, for so many of us who had strategic plans, what percentage of those plans came through in 2020? So I think that puts the argument to rest. And so what I do is, it's very much about keeping it contextual, and not holding on to anything tightly. So for instance, I know that every year I have a leadership conference, and in 2020 it didn't happen because it used to be a physical thing. Actually, we did it in Barbados once in 2019, and so it used to be a physical thing. So in 2020, as I said, I had to let go of all of those concepts of planning, what's for breakfast, how are we going to do this. And in that planning, on it emerged that we have to go online because we don't know what will happen in 2021. So that's what I'm speaking about in terms of, I know what my intention is, I know what I want to happen, but the plans of detail, I don't have to be so rigid about it, because something is going to have blank canvas that is going to allow me to paint the picture that I want. And so there is a way in which I think for me it's been a very spiritual experience. And I know in organizations we just think about our academics and stuff like that. And so I refer to a lot of people in organizations as talking heads, because we just see about this part of our body. And for us to really, for me to get through Corona, I had to deal with the emotions. And in that wilderness, in my self-imposed desert, I also had to deal with my spirituality. And so I want to lead from that position, which is really about as I started the program, you asked me about who I am, and I said there are many parts of me. I want to bring that. I'm bringing that all together. So when I work with leaders, whether it is on a strategic plan, whatever it is, we need to talk about how people are feeling, because we are dealing with teams, we're dealing with people, and therefore we can't just deal with numbers, we can't just deal with stats and a strategy. We have to deal with our people, their emotions, their spirituality, their physicality to carry us forward. So the blank canvas, any parts of that equation can pop up, and we need to deal with it as it pops up.
Fantastic. So I'm hearing also from you the importance also of leaders to be extremely flexible, willing to, you mentioned a little earlier, willing to let go, because there are things that you hold on to dearly oftentimes, and you're going to have to learn what it means to let go of those things.
Yeah.
Now, Maxine, I can't believe that the time is going so quickly, right? But as we come in, and as we start to like, what then for you is future leadership, probably coined in a sentence, coined in a word, coined in a phrase? How are you coining future leadership? Because you're going to work with executives, you're going to work with leaders, you're going to work with CEOs, you're going to work with persons around, you're going to continue your conference. There are persons who coming into your conference will surely not expect to hear things that happened probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago. They're looking out for something fresh, something new. For
Definitely.
you, what will future leadership look like?
So there will be a return of humanity in our leadership.
Hmm?
And we as leaders are going to recognize that we do not need to be top dog, that our leadership is really about a beautiful collaboration with the people. We share a consciousness, where we share a community, where we have decided that we will share our privilege, the power that comes with our position, the knowledge that we have. And in doing so, we get of learning ourselves, learning others, and learning how to be. Because the pandemic isn't over. We're probably this is a paradigm shift that we have experienced and we are experiencing, and we don't know where we will land. So how beautiful it is to go on this journey with people who we trust, who we love, who we are willing to collaborate with, our team members, and go on this exploration, this experimentation, that we will paint something together on a blank canvas.
Fantastic. Sounds like if teamwork is going to be a major priority as we move
Absolutely,
forward. We're
it
going to pause
is.
for our cause one more time, Maxine, and then we come back. We're going to ask you an interesting question. I'm excited to ask Maxine this question. Let's pause for that,
Can't
please.
wait.
So, Maxine, we spoke a little earlier about the fact you changed careers, different things like that. You took a different step in life, basically. What would Maxine say to 18-year-old Maxine if she had the
Mm.
opportunity to speak to her right now? What would you look Maxine straight in the eyes and say to her, knowing where Maxine is today? What would you have said to 18-year-old Maxine?
As soon as you can, find yourself. Stand in your self power. You are powerful. You know as much as anybody else about what you should do in your life. Trust yourself. God has chosen you for a purpose. So therefore, trust God, trust yourself, and you'll be fine.
You'll be fine. I think
You'll be
you'll be
fine.
fine.
Yeah.
You'll be
Yeah.
fine. Thank you so very much, Maxine. We were talking to Maxine Atring Executive Coach. She's out of Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, they're on the lockdown again. But fortunately for us, we were able to hear from her and be a part. I have her be a part of our first episode as we move and as we continue to expand Leadership Matters. I am Dr. Ken Royberg, and I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Remember, we are bi weekly half our series aimed at supporting leaders. This is an extremely challenging time, and our focus is supporting leaders. So I want you to join us on Facebook, join us on YouTube, join us on Instagram, and you can join us here every other week, bi weekly. You can hear us every other week on VOB 92.9 FM. I want to challenge you. Live your life in such a way that it makes an impact on somebody else's. Add value to them instead of depreciation. God bless you, and thank you so very much for joining us.